So in society, both ancient and modern, we see some similarities in how influence and control is exercised over the people. I was watching something from a guy, his name I believe was Steve Hassan, and he had come out of, I think, the Moonies at one point, and he became someone who was involved in deprogramming people who had been heavily mind controlled, we could say. And he talked about some of the things that are done and how the leader of a society or a group, be it the Egyptian Empire or the Babylonian Empire or Heaven's Gate, or in his case the Moonies, or the People's Temple, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, or into greater or lesser extents, was able to have amazing control over the minds and therefore the behavior of the people. And deification or is used in the Egyptian and Sumerian and Babylonian societies. We can see where the Pharaoh was God, for instance. He was deified. And then in the Roman Empire, we can see that the Pope is made to be the vicar of God, the go-between, the broker between you and God, which is sort of like, reminds me a little bit of the the relationship where you've got Jesus Christ is the mediator between God and man, in that line of thinking, the advocate with the Father. At least when you've got when you've got a theology that allows him to be a separate being, I suppose, from the Father, as opposed to the Trinity when he's just the Father incarnate, I suppose. In other words, in flesh, in English. So, in these religious cults, or when they are made into a political empire, and essentially that's what happens on a smaller scale in some of these religious movements or cults, as we could call them. Particularly easier to see would be like the Moonies or the Heaven's Gate, or the People's Temple. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. James Jones, Jonestown, started I think in San Francisco. But so these people become your sole authority to speak in the name of the Lord God. Your connection with deity is brokered through the supreme leader of the group, whether it be Pharaoh or the Pope or David Koresh or Warren Jeffs. So what we see is that information that is contradicting that comes from the supreme authority, okay, which would be those individuals who were the prophet or the vicar of God, essentially. The manifestation of God's will is through them, and all authority comes through them. And we see that the Jehovah's Witnesses do that with a body of men, similar to the brethren or 12 apostles in the First Presidency in the LDS Church. You can look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have a different name for their group. I've read it. It's something like the something, slave of God or something. I should be slaves. You would think, and I think they're using the Apostle Paul's terminology there. He said he was like the slave of Jesus Christ. The servant always sounds better, doesn't it? At any rate, these people have supreme authority. When the brethren have spoken, the conversation is over. Does that sound familiar? The leader may say things that are contrary to some of your existing beliefs, but they must supersede all of your beliefs, religious, political, or otherwise. In the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, we see that information control is exercised. People are heavily discouraged from reading outside material that would have anything against what they're taught there, which could include science or history or theological thoughts. Their behavior is influenced heavily. They must have short hair. They must not use tattoos. And some of these things sound, okay to some people. I don't like tattoos. Having short hair, they have to have short hair. They have to have like a white shirt and slacks in church. Women have to wear a dress. It's nice to wear a dress, but if you can't come to church because you don't have the clothing, is that really right? Not according to the kind of things you'd read in the book of Alma. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to smoke, which is, smoking's bad for you, but it's a religious tenet. But they are told it's fine to drink, especially wine. As a matter of fact, on jw.org you can look, and it advocates that and says just don't get drunk. But I also learned a reference from there in the book of Timothy. I don't remember if it's first or second, and I read it even on lds.org, and the Apostle Paul does command the people to stop drinking water and start drinking wine instead. Maybe not all together, all water, but it does say it. It's actually there. It's in the King James Version too on lds.org. We don't get shown that in our lesson manuals because it contradicts the word of wisdom, but then so did the behavior of those who were around leading the church when that was given as a revelation. So their time is taken heavily. They don't want them to have enough time to think about what's going on, so they control what they think and what they do. They've got meetings on Saturday. That's their Sabbath. On Monday they got to do preparation for Bible study. On Wednesday they've got so their less Bible lesson study, but it's not just out of the Bible. Probably about 90% of it comes out of their own other publications, where they give their version or interpretation of what selected scriptures mean. So they're reading it out of the Watchtower, kind of like correlated lesson manuals. And then they've got Friday, and basically what you see is their time is inundated. They're inundated but on top of that, they've got to go door to door soliciting their religion, giving people, all the people basically do it, not just 60,000 missionaries, but basically everybody has to put at least 10 hours a month in. Or if you want to have a higher degree, I suppose, of advancement in their church, then maybe more hours, like up to 50 hours a month. Kind of like a stake missionary, 10 hours a week. And so they're bombarded with their doctrine constantly, sharing it with others, sharing it with each other, and always with their spin on it from the Watchtower, And they're not necessarily encouraged just to read the Bible by itself alone. From what I've read from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I know what it's like to have someone who's not of your religion tell you what you believe or do, and they don't know what they're talking about, well, just like the Christians do the people in the LDS church, and they get some of it right and some of it they often don't. And you know how it's like to resent being told what you believe by someone else. However, a lot of times what other people get to see is from a perspective that's a little bit outside of the information control. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are told what to study, who to associate with, who not to. You know, they avoid non-members of their church a lot more than LDS people do. There are some different things, but when you say, hey, well, we've got family home evening on Monday. Well, great, that's your family, but you're supposed to use something from a church-approved manual on what to do and teach doctrine. You know, Wednesday you got mutual. Saturday you might have a youth activity or something, or your family gets to clean the chapel. Sunday you got 3 hours of meetings, and you have to keep the Sabbath day holy. And basically what I found is, you know, with children, if you're really going to try to do what the, you know, Brigham Young said to do, and avoid most other activities, you wind up watching, you know, these old church videos for hours. What happened? Help share the truth. Spread the Mormon truth videos. Like them, share them, subscribe, post them. History doesn't need to be whitewashed. We got to the truth. You've seen it. You know it. It's documented. Do your part. Thanks.